Well, it's good to be here with you this evening. My name is Jean-Marie Baptiste Vianney. I am from France. I'm from this city of Dardilly, France. I'm near Lyon. I was born in 1786. And if you know anything about French history, 1786, about 3 years later, the French Revolution started. And if you know anything about the French Revolution, it was a very dangerous time to be Catholic. So what ended up happening is, instead of going to the church and receiving my first communion, the priest came to our house, and I received my first communion in secret. And so, even as a young boy, I realized how important our Catholic faith was, my Catholic faith was, something worth cherishing, something worth protecting, even something worth dying for. And as time would go on, the French Revolution went on for a while, and even after it stopped, there really wasn't an opportunity for me to go to school. So I didn't actually go to school until I was 20 years old. I went to school at age 20, and at this time, a lot of the classes were in Latin. It was very difficult for me to learn Latin. And yet, after a couple years, I was able to go to seminary. I felt called to be a priest for a long time, ever since I was young. And yet, what ended up happening was when I was 24, they pulled me out of seminary and they made me join the military. So I was conscripted into the French military. And I got very sick very quickly. And so I really wasn't supposed to go to the military because I was in seminary, but they didn't care about that. And so when I got sick, I decided to just depart the military, if you will. And I stayed somewhere. I stayed at a farm for a couple of years. When I turned 26, the French Revolution was over, or at least the war was over, and so now it was actually time to go to seminary. But once again, I couldn't learn Latin. And so here I am at seminary, not really being able to understand. But thankfully, my pastor, Father Bailey, bailed me out, if you will, and he convinced the seminary that he would teach me the classes in French. So I went to his parish, and I studied there for the next 2 years. Now, I've been told that there's been a rumor that I wasn't very smart, but that's not true. I went to seminary in just 2 years. I just couldn't go in Latin. I needed to go in French because I never learned Latin, because I never went to school until I was 20 years old. When I became a priest, I was 29 years old, and because of my inability to learn Latin, I wasn't able to hear confessions for the first 7 months as a priest. I got assigned to Father Bailey's parish, and I was at his parish for 3 years. And after 3 years, I was finally given a parish where I could become the pastor. The parish's name was Ars. Ars is a small little town, and in fact, when I went to travel to Ars to become the pastor, I couldn't find it. I didn't know where it was. But I met somebody that was from Ars, and I said to him, if you lead me to Ars, I will lead you to heaven. And so he did lead me to Ars. Ars is a little town of about 230 people at the time. And, as time would go on, I realized that God had given me a gift to hear confessions, and even more specifically, a gift to read hearts, which comes in handy sometimes when you're hearing confessions, especially if the person doesn't confess all their sins. Then you can help them out. You can say, well, what about this, and this, and this? And you can help them make a fuller confession. At times, God would let me see things. I happened to overhear Tim kind of stealing my thunder, telling my stories. But there was a time where a woman came wanting to know if her husband was in heaven because he had died by suicide. And God gave me a vision of him. I was able to see that when he was falling off this bridge, he actually did confess his sins and ask God for forgiveness. And so he was saved, but he was in purgatory. And I was able to tell the woman this. Again, some of the things that I became known for later is I was very much into fasting. I saw that fasting was really important for the conversion of souls, and in fact, a lot of times I would just eat one boiled potato a day. One boiled potato a day, if you can imagine. And this was an important thing for me, something that God asked me to do. There were times where God would use me to bring about miracles. There was a time when there was a boy with a tumor on his face, and I touched his face and prayed for him, and the tumor went away immediately. But as many priests experience, being a pastor, there was a moment in which there was kind of an outcry against me, believe it or not, where there was a petition going around saying that I was incompetent and lazy and that I was driving people away, and they actually brought the petition to me, and I looked at it and I said, well, yeah, I guess this is true, so I'm going to sign it too. And that's what I did, and that kind of ended that petition, because I was willing to sign it myself. Later in my life, though, when I was about 57 years old, I got very sick. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was on my deathbed. And I sought the intercession of St. Philomena. When I was 16 years old, 1802, they found the relics of St. Philomena in Rome. And I had heard about her, and I heard that through these relics, many, many miracles happened. And so this wasn't the first time I sought Philomena's intercession, but through her, I believe I was cured. And she was a spiritual friend to me. She, I believe, through her intercession, that's how the miracles came about. She was someone who I respected and admired and asked for her prayers frequently. And I think she might even be here tonight. And so, long hair.
Hi, my name is Saint Philomena, and I am the daughter of a king of a small Grecian state, and my mother is of royal blood too. My mother and father sacrificed and prayed to false gods to obtain a child, but we had a family member that was a doctor and also a Christian. And he told my parents that if they were baptized in the Christian faith, they would conceive a child. So they were baptized, and a year later, January 10th to be exact, I was born. I received the Eucharist for the first time when I was 5 years old, and I consecrated myself to Jesus when I was 11. And then my 13th year came. The Emperor Diocletian waged an unjust war against my country. So my father took my mother and I to Rome to negotiate peace with the emperor. But the emperor kept staring at me, and he told my father that he would stop waging war on our country if I would be his wife. And my parents agreed. They told me I was so fortunate that I was going to be an empress of Rome. But I told them I am betrothed to Jesus. And they said, think of your father, think of your mother. And I said, God is my father, and heaven is my mother. So, when I appeared in front of the emperor for the first time, he was very kind to me, but when he realized that I would not concede, he told me that if I would not be his lover, then he would be my tyrant. And I told him I neither desire him as my lover nor fear him as my tyrant. So he threw me in a dungeon and chained my hands and feet and fed me bread and water once a day. But on the 36th day, the Holy Virgin came to me, holding her infant son. And she said that in 3 days I would be released, but I would experience many torments. So indeed, on the 40th day, I was released, stripped, and scourged. I was then thrown back into prison to die. But during the night, 2 angels came and anointed me, and I woke up completely healed in the morning. The emperor was astounded, so he pulled me out of prison again, tied a rope around my neck with an anchor to drown me in the Tiber River. But 2 angels came again and cut the cord and bore me on their wings to safety. I didn't even get wet. The emperor said this is some kind of magic, and he had me dragged through Rome and shot with arrows until I was about to die. Then he threw me back in prison to die without any comfort. But in the morning, I woke up completely healed and more beautiful than ever, singing psalms to our Lord. The emperor, more stubborn than Pharaoh, had me pulled out of prison again to be shot with arrows, but when the soldiers pulled back their bow, the arrows would not move. So the emperor had them put the arrows in a red-hot furnace. And when they shot the arrows at me, the arrows turned back and hit the soldiers, killing 6 of them. Finally, without further ado, I was beheaded, and I flew triumphantly to my spouse in heaven. This was on a Friday, August 10th at 3:30 in the afternoon in the year 304. My remains were not discovered in the catacombs until 1802. They knew my name was Philomena and that I was a virgin and a martyr because the titles said, "Peace be to you, Philomena," and they had emblems of a lily, a palm, arrows, and an anchor. They moved my relics to a church where many miracles occurred, and in 1833 I revealed my entire story to Sister Maria Luisa di Gesù. And it wasn't long after that that our Lord healed St. John Vianney through my intercession. St. John Vianney and I have a very special union of heart, and he calls me his dear little saint.
Very good, Lena. I want to share with you a couple more things before we have a little final prayer at the end of this. There's different quotes that have been written down about me. If you look on your tables, there's at least one sheet with 3 quotes that I want to share with you. One of the things that I would say and remember and hold on to is this idea that a priest goes to hell or to heaven with 1,000 people behind him. And it's a good reminder of how important the role of a priest is. It's a good reminder for me as well, because this is part of being a priest, is leading people to heaven. That's the goal. Another thing that I'd like to reflect on is that really we're called to take up our cross and follow Jesus. We're called to go on the way of the cross with him. And one of the challenges to that is that we're afraid. And we're afraid to take up our cross and follow him. And we're afraid of the cross that God gives us to carry. And I think it's really important to have courage, courage to take up our cross and to actually hold tight to it, to realize that it is the cross that God has given us that's going to lead us to heaven. So instead of being afraid of it, we want to hold on to it. And in fact, we want to love the cross that God has given us. And it's something, again, to remember maybe in your own life, whatever cross you have right now. It's easy either to be afraid of it or to reject it or to not want it. But if you can realize that actually God gave you this cross to lead you to him, to lead you to heaven, and that it's through this very thing that you don't want that is going to draw you to him. And so it's good to hold on to that. Maybe if you're tempted, maybe if you're struggling, the sign of the cross is something you can do lots of different ways, lots of different times. But remember what you're doing. Remember what you're doing. You're remembering the sacrifice that Jesus made for you, the cost that he paid for your salvation. And in fact, it's also good to realize that the devil hates it when we do the sign of the cross. It's actually a terrible weapon against him. And so it's a great gift that God gives us that we can make that sign of the cross. This evening we had a chance to reflect on the lives of St. Philomena, St. Vianney. We are blessed here at our parish to have them as our patron or patroness. I think we're embracing that more and more. Going to ours this year definitely helped me to embrace it. Many of you were able to follow along with us on that trip, and so we are blessed.